Windermere.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. With that, we'll call to order our virtual workshop for the Town of Windermere for July 26, 2022. And we will go ahead and begin with our flag salute. Hopefully, Mr. Martini has brought our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you all. We do have a quorum this evening with the absence of Councilperson Williams. We're also going to go ahead and have our public comment after the presentation. That way I think we'll get the best feedback and best information from those comments, and we'll make those the most valuable they can be for all of us here this evening. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump on down to item F, which is other items for consideration. And item 1 is Lake Street Parks presentation. Town Manager Smith to present.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually the 4th presentation that we've completed for not only just the public, but also with Parks and Recreation Committee and with Town Council. We've had several Town Council members present for the various workshops that we've conducted, as well as Public Works, PD. I know Chief was on one call. I think Sergeant Bonk was on another call, and I think DC was on another call as well. So this is the 4th presentation that we've done. We did the first one on July 7th that was notified with everybody within 500 feet of the impact parks. We did another one on July 13th, and then subsequently did one on July 14th, which was a live meeting with Parks and Recreation. We do have Tanya Elliott Moore, who is our Public Works Director, on, and Councilmember David on as well, who is the Parks and Recreation liaison, if there's any questions on the recommendations. And we also have Nora Brophy, who is the committee chair of Parks and Recreation. But basically what we were tasked with was taking a look at some of the issues that we've been dealing with over at Lake Street Park. And again, I'm trying to be both admin and to read some of the stuff, but over the years, Lake Street and Lake Dam Park have become increasingly popular with both town and non-town residents. With that, there's an increase in popularity, increase in unruly behavior. Neighbors and police have witnessed an increase in drinking, drug use, noise, and other complaints. Neighbors now fear for retribution should they contact the police. One thing I do want to say before we move forward is that if you see something, please say something. You don't have to call 911. Chief will post on the chat the non-emergency line. The more data that we collect with all the issues that we have in this area, the more evidence we have to help out with any assistance that we need from FWC, Florida Wildlife Commission, Orange County Sheriff's Office, or Orange County with additional ordinances that need to be put in place if that is needed in the future. So we're continuing this dialogue with adjacent neighbors and the community in order to identify issues and discuss possible solutions, and those solutions will be addressed at the very end of this presentation. So this is the area that we're looking at. You can see that Lake Street Park goes from 5th Avenue all the way down to, or 5th Avenue up to 3rd. And there's 2 docks that you can see. Again, I'm having to maneuver through some of these items here. The one area that you see over here on 4th Avenue, that is the area where we receive FERDAP funds in order to construct a dock. And then also over here on Lake Street and 5th, there's a dock as well that has a overhang. One thing I do want to note before we get any further is prior to 2010, there was a lawsuit that was initiated by the adjacent property owners that were adjacent to the lakefront. So what they did was they claimed that the town vacated this old right-of-way because when you look at the 1927 plat, this was actually a right-of-way. It wasn't, sorry. it was a right of way. It was not a road. It was not part of those properties. So they sued, trying to find or trying to get that property attached to their properties. And what was ordered by the court and was actually settled was that they were allowed access for a boat ramp, not boat ramp, but a boat dock or slip on their piece of the property that is adjacent to theirs, contiguous. And as part of that, the town was able to continue utilizing that Lake Street Park for recreational activities. So that's one thing that, the court has ordered, and some of those activities are listed in the order itself. So here's why we're here today. This is a video taken from one of the residents, again, with the limited access that people have to these parks. You see an increase in activity on the weekends. We've actually seen people bus people in. We've also seen people launch boats from this location, which they're not allowed to do. People always ask me about the old swim area. Was everybody able to see that and hear that? Can you get a thumbs up?
Yes, thank you, Robert.
All right, thank you. We've also had to, sorry, Chief has posted the dispatch number. We've also been able to see people launching John boats and, so on and so forth from that location as well. But some of the things that we wanted to look at was what has the town done and what are we currently doing? Because a lot of people are like, okay, well, are we just sitting on our hands? Are we actually taking initiative and being proactive? So some of the things that we've taken, again, this has been a discussion over the last several years. We want to take a measured approach as opposed to just going ahead and shutting down the parks, to see if and what works, prior to looking at the possibility of, when I say privatization, it would be resident only. So what we've done is increase signage. We've installed security cameras at both locations. We've increased patrols at those areas. We've added split rail fencing to show delineation between, where you can park, where you can't park. We're working with Orange County, the Butler Chain Lakes Advisory Committee, Orange County EPD, Florida Wildlife Commission, OCSO, Orange County Sheriff's Office, on establishing additional no wake or motorized watercraft exclusion areas along the park, similar to what you see that was just passed by Orange County for Bird Island. And then we passed more strict ordinances related to commercial activities on town property, as well as additional citation processes for civil infractions. So if you're jumping off the dock, if you're parking, or if you're trying to run a commercial business off the docks, we have those abilities to do a civil infraction to make sure that you're, not being able to do it again. That would be jet ski rentals, pontoon rentals, so on and so forth. So the first thing we did was, as a measured approach, was to increase the signage at all of the areas. And you can see some of the examples of the signage that you see here. You can also see the split rail. So as you can see, the signage worked, and there's no issues at any of the parks. This is actually provided to us by one of the residents, and this is at Lake and Fifth, where people or kids will do anything they can in order to get on that roof and jump off of it. This is a safety and liability issue. And again, this is not a swim area, which everybody thought it was a swim area back in the day until somebody went to the Butler Chain Lakes Advisory Committee, asked for an additional buoy, and we were notified that that was not a permitted swim area. And we had to go ahead and remove those, that rope and buoy, or face a $10,000 a day fine. So one of the things that we did that the town invested in was security cameras at the various parks. And this was a significant endeavor by not only the town, but also by Public Works. We put cameras in over at Fernwood Park, not park, but Fernwood boat ramp, Windermere Recreation Center, Lake Street, and Lake Down parks. The cameras include phone applications where we can be used by law enforcement to monitor and respond if needed. These devices have already been used in resolving minor crimes and trespassing individuals. One of the crimes was, I believe somebody took a cell phone from the Fernwood boat ramp and were able to retrieve that. Another issue was there was somebody launching a John boat over at Fifth and Lake. We were able to get the tag and notify them of trespassing. The cameras also include license plate readers to assist law enforcement to trespass individuals who are not abiding by town regulations and are reported. So you don't really have to be present. We're able to see the issues when we're on our phones. And again, the people that have access to these phones is everybody that's on duty, the chief and I, as well as Public Works, to keep continuously monitor what's going on at those parks, and we can record certain items too. And on the left, you can see the app on how we see it. And on the right-hand side, you can see what the security cameras look like. So another thing that we're working with, and this is how we involve District 1 Commissioner Nicole Wilson. As with Eager Island or Bird Island, the town is working with Orange County, EPD, FWCO, CSO, via Butler Channel Lakes Advisory Committee in order to establish a no-wake or motorized watercraft exclusion zone. This process will take some time. The Bird Island ordinance was a pilot project, and since it is now in effect, OCSO and FWC are working on establishing countywide restrictions in various areas. Each area will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and enforcement will be an issue, but adds additional tools. Again, everything that we talk about tonight is going to be an additional tool, whether it's a deterrent or it's a tool for law enforcement to utilize to curtail some of the misbehaviors that's happening out there. And that was one of the concerns that Mayor Demings had when they were talking about the Egret Island ordinance, was we didn't want to give a false of hope that, okay, once this ordinance is passed and the no swim area is created, then you're never going to hear any music, you're never going to see any boats out there, so on and so forth. So again, our jurisdiction ends at the normal high water elevation, and then it goes to FWC, Orange County, and the state of Florida. So we can only do anything that we do landward, we can do through the town, but anything past that has to involve those other jurisdictions. And the reason that it takes so long to get these things passed is it has to go through Orange County EPD, again, FWC, that have stakeholder meetings, then go to the Board of County Commissioners. And when we asked for the Egret Island / Bird Island ordinance to be passed and some of the regulations in that, then, you know, FWC and OCSO were saying, hey, listen, what about this issue, this, you know, there's issues all over the county relative to boating safety. And it started to get lumped into everything. But then they decided to go ahead and meter everything out and make sure that everything is done on a case-by-case basis. So again, when it comes to enforcement, the Butler Channel Lakes Advisory Committee has helped supplement funds to Windermere Police Department to do weekend patrols. But we've passed more strict ordinances relating to commercial activities on town property, as well as additional citation processes for civil infractions, jumping up a dog, parking, etc. The town can now consider banning smoking and vaping at parks, which will add additional tools for law enforcement. I know some of the issues that we currently have are people smoking marijuana, they're vaping. You know, if a law enforcement officer is out there, they see that, or we see it on the cameras, we can go ahead and respond and write a civil citation. And we've increased the patrols, as I said, with the Butler Channel Lakes Advisory Committee. But we can only be out there so much with the amount of law enforcement staff that we have. And for another item, people asked in the past, well, how many interactions have we had with law enforcement over at these parks? And I believe Sergeant Bonk provided 130 in the last year interactions over at this area. Is that correct, Chief?
We've got 130 documented incidents where we've been out there, but a lot, you got to remember, many of those are officers that are checking out on patrol themselves.
Yeah. But as council has seen on our daily reports that we get, you know, recently we've seen an increase or an uptick in some of the major issues, whether it be drug use or alcohol use, and we've had a couple of deaths out there. So one of the things a lot of people talk about is, can we make these resident only? The one issue of making resident only is that in 2007, 2008, even though I have 2078, the town was awarded a FERDAP grant in the amount of 112,500 for the improvements, which included both Lake Street and Lake Down. So should the town wish to make these private resident only parks, the town would have to pay back those FERDAP funds with interest. So we're pretty much estimating it to be between 130 and 140. And the town would not be prevented from looking for FERDAP funds in the future, meaning that if we wanted to do additional funds for Central Park, Palmer Park, any place that we don't want to open up for the general public to have access to. Now, we're currently working with not Department of Economic Opportunity, but we're working with DEP because they're the actual administrators of the grant to figure out, okay, well, what's the process if council is to go into this direction? Is there a forgiveness, avenue that we can take, or is it just paying it back with interest? So hopefully they'll take the forgiveness because of what was created out there is created not just an amenity, but some people have seen it as an, for lack of a better term, an attractive nuisance. It's brought people out there, and that's where they're congregating. That's where we're having a lot of the issues. So again, logistics of redesignated the park to resident only. We would need to amend the comprehensive plan and zoning and the repayment to Florida Recreation Development and Assistance Program. People have said, okay, why can't Parks and Rec just pay for that? Parks and Recreation was created, through the volunteers, and they make their money through the various events they put on, Pet Fest, Remembering the Lakes. So we wouldn't be looking for Parks and Recreation to pay for this or repay this if we're going to move in that direction. It would come out of the town reserves. A fence and a gate will have to be installed. We've already received some initial quotes, so we can provide that figure to you. And then restricting the parking at the park entrance points. We can do something similar to that we did to Fernwood Park, which was a Fernwood boat ramp, which is putting signage that says no parking on the weekends, and like pretty much creating that buffer zone around those entrance points to make sure that the people that are just out of town and coming in are not parking at those locations. So pretty much just trying to deter a lot of the any inappropriate behavior and hoping it goes somewhere else. So we'll look again, including a gate system similar to what we see at the one proposed at Fernwood. The only problem is that, with the boat ramp, you pay for the key, and that is something that is required per our policies and procedures. With this, we would have to give an individual code to each of the residential homes that are in the town of Windermere. Now there's 1,600 parcels, but there's about 1,125 actual homes in the town of Windermere. So you're looking at that amount of different codes that we would have to provide to each individual. And again, with the staff that we pretty much have, which for town admin is 5, you're looking at a lot of pressure on not only staff, but also enforcement as well. And we'll talk about some of those issues that come up with some of the enforcement. Some of the other discussions items that people have brought up, well, let's create a swim area. So that'll push back some of the jet skis or some of the other motorized watercraft that's coming in. Well, then you have to balance out, does a swim area attract more people, or is it going to detract more of the jet skiers from being in that certain area? Again, our jurisdiction ends at that normal high water elevation. People have suggested removal of some structures. The roof at the pier on 5th and Lake. That has been a big issue. We've tried to put certain things on there to try to prevent teenagers from jumping off of it. But as you can see, they can be very resilient, very resourceful, and continue to jump off of that roof. Amending the times of the park's access, and then restricting the amount of people. Again, there's no silver bullet, there's no easy answer to any of these questions. Whatever you do is going to be more of a deterrent than resolving the problem, because enforceability and logistics is going to be a huge issue no matter what you decide. So as with the cut through traffic issue, which we've discussed at length, the council again is stuck with the balancing act of possibly adding more restrictions to the residents due to an issue that is being created by non-residents. This is not an easy issue to resolve, which is the purpose of these workshops. So what came out of the two residential public input workshops that we had, and I believe also, and Tony can correct me if I'm wrong, or Councilmember David, is that we moved towards making the parks resident only. We will work with not DOE, but DEP to pay back or forgive the FERDAP monies. The fencing and the gate system would be between $25,000 and $30,000. I'm setting up a meeting with District 1 Commissioner Nicole Wilson on the Lake Down boat ramp access that was brought up at a previous meeting as well. If the town were to take over that access, then we would have control over residents actually only having access to that ramp. Do I think that they're going to go for it? Probably not, but we'll see what happens. Work with town council to prohibit vaping and smoking at town parks. That can be done just through a ordinance reading. It would take 2 months. So if council's going to consent to that tonight, I'll be able to go ahead and put it on the August meeting. And then continue to work with Orange County EPD, Orange County, OCSO, Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Committee, and FWC on creating those zones, the no wake zones, no motorized vehicle zones, watercraft zones, to make sure that we're creating more of that buffer and more tools for law enforcement, and pretty much trying to create that deterrent for people to come out and do these activities that the parks were not meant to be used for. I know, Chief has his thoughts as far as, we're going to create more negative, interactions with law enforcement. Logistics are going to be hard to work out. If you have a code for one resident, how many people can they bring as far as guests? How many, can you have a max at the parks, so on and so forth. So there's going to be a lot of issues that come up, but the people in these areas and the general thought was the town needs to do something and do something more than what they're doing right now. The gates, not the gates, but the split rail fencing, the security cameras just aren't meeting the level of expectations of the residents. So they do want to move forward with taking back the park and making it a resident only park. And then it'll be up to staff to figure out, okay, how we're going to do that, how we're going to enforce that, and how much is it going to cost. With that said, I can turn it over to Tanya or Mandy to see if they just want to reflect what Parks and Recreation had as a recommendation.
Mandy, did you want to go ahead?
Sure, and you can add whatever. Parks and Recs did vote unanimously to go ahead and pay back the grant so that we can make it a resident-only park. Their concerns also is how do we maintain that? How do we enforce that? So of course, there's still a lot of logistics to be played out, but they were all in favor unanimously to go ahead and do what we can to help the residents have a more peaceful atmosphere at their homes. Tanya?
Right, and we have a repository on videos, pictures, and again, that's why we suggest people call the non-emergency line when they have an issue, not text message a council member or a staff member, because then we're able to actually document the time and we can have a quicker response for law enforcement to get out there to hopefully resolve those issues. And I see that Chief has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Chief.
Nope, I'm good.
Oh, you have to put your hand down then.
I'll lower his hand for him. But hopefully everybody can understand the, as far as logistics is concerned about implementing this. Number one, we're gonna have to negotiate with DEP on the repayment of the FERDAP funds. Whether it's gonna be 140 or maybe something less, that's still to be determined. That's gonna take some time. With the gates and the fencing, that's something that, we're able to do, and we're able to hopefully absorb in next fiscal year's budget. But working with Orange County, Butler Chain of Lakes Advisory Committee, and everybody else, on establishing the no watercraft exclusion zone, a swim area, whatever it may be. That's going to take some time because it has other jurisdictions involved. And as you can tell with the Erie Island issue, that took 2 years just to get through that process. So whatever is decided at a following council meeting, will take some time to implement. So we're just asking for everybody's patience. And again, the logistics are going to be overwhelming.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And certainly, yeah, there will be some challenges. Chief, I am interested in hearing your thoughts on enforcement, enforceability, police interactions. I do think that we want to have that information. Council may have that from previous meetings as well, but I would like to get your input on that.
Yeah, we certainly all understand the situation that we're in here, but at the same time, the concern is always, placing law enforcement officers in those kind of a minimal confrontational type situations. Let's face it, the media groups and news and advocacy groups right now aren't the friends of law enforcement. We've been very blessed here in the town that our residents and our community support us, but that's not really the case outside. Last several years have been nothing about police bashing and trying to get police officers to have no contact with minimal quote unquote type crimes or these kind of situations. And we'll be kind of really establishing more kind of criteria for that. So again, that's just a concern for us. I think that we all need to be aware of ahead of time so that we don't expect, we expect more of an educational component to this. Just kind of working our way through the system and then figuring out how it is that we're going to enforce some of these rules, figuring out the residents and things of that nature. So it's a process like anything else. But I don't want anybody to expect that, if we make this change, then the next day we're going to be going in and making fiscal arrests or things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a process for us all, including our officers.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of notice during the time that we're working out some logistics. And again, we're going to have to, trial and error through this whole process on what works, what doesn't work. And I see Mandy's hand is up.
I just have a question for Chief. Would this, though, doing this process, will this help your officers to have a little more enforcement? Because I know that some of the stories I'm hearing, they don't have any backup to enforce anything. And the outside people coming in have been not nice to our officers when they've been just trying to ask them to, keep it down and stuff like that. So would at least this give you a little bit of power to enforce things at the parks?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if they're a non-resident, that's the starter right there. They can be trespassed off the property, and that's exactly what we'll end up doing. Or if there's certainly any minor violations, they'll probably be given, some kind of a minor juvenile citation or something like that, which is more of a civil infraction and total leave and trespass off the property. So anything that we add will have that component to it that we'll be able to, sink our teeth in, so to speak, just to have a good cause for a stop or an encounter or something of that nature, which is always what we want to have, to be able to take enforcement action.
And I would like to add that if you do prohibit vaping and smoking, that does give law enforcement that ability to interact with that person and then follow through with, okay, where do you live, so on and so forth, and trespass or do a civil infraction. Just walking up and seeing a group of people out there and then asking, okay, who here is a resident, that's more of a kind of a negative interaction. But by having that vaping and smoking prohibition, that does give them a tool that they can use to interact with those residents or non-residents that are out there.
Yeah, Robert, to add to that, the county has done that, and we've actually just put together a program we're going to be announcing soon about the risk of vaping for teenagers and stuff like that. It's a real issue, and we've been seeing that for years. Significant amount of drugs and illegal drugs and some hardcore drugs actually going into vape pens, not just people vaping, the old cigarette vaping thing. That's I would say more than 50% of the time that's not in the vaping pens whatsoever. So that gives us one more tool. And there's a real risk. There's a real risk to vaping, and and all the stuff that's going on with that. So again, be looking for that announcement soon because we're going to do a community educational seminar on that. But so I don't want to take too much time tonight on that.
Yeah, and we can work through that today, and at the end of our workshop here, if council has interest in that, we can let staff be aware, and then we can begin to work forward on that type of ordinance. I saw Councilperson Rose's and Councilperson Martini's hands up. I'd like to go ahead and get your input now, and then we'll move to public comment and then finish our conversation afterwards. Councilperson Rose.
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. I'd like the chief to briefly describe what the current process is. Like, do they wait for a complaint from a resident or somebody, or do they put somebody going by there during these active times? Because it's not every day of the week and it's not 24/7, you know, but I'm sure that it's, 10 hours on Saturday and Sunday or something like that. And then the other question is, does Parks and Rec think, and the chief, I guess, that it would help if we remove the roofs or roof? Because that seems to be one of the biggest offenders out there. Or maybe even just, if we don't remove the docks, people are just going to launch their boats and they're going to come in from the water. Call it, and you're still going to have to figure out who's a resident and who's not. So maybe having the docks is just too enticing, but I don't know. So those are my questions.
Well, and I think
Okay.
this is the balance. I'm sorry, Chief. That was a question directly for you. I apologize.
Not a problem. Yes, we've been very active, and out of 130 of those calls for service, I would say well over half of those are probably our officers checking out there on a regular basis. I'm looking at the video right now myself. I know last week you guys saw that Officer Hebel went out there on his own accord and actually did a trespass warning and took a vape pen and things of that nature. So it's a combination of the calls for service, but they're actively patrolling. In addition to that, if you'll remember, we solicited the county a few years ago for shoreline enforcement. And what we do is during the summer months and also the holidays, when we know that there's going to be a peak amount of people out there, we believe to be, there's I think about 25 days, usually Saturday and Sundays, and again, holidays like July 4th. We have another extra off-duty officer that spends about 8 to 10 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday at all the different parks. So the Fernwood Park, this Lake Street Park, all the different parks, they could just go from park to park as an extra officer to make sure that there's an extra set of eyes and ears out there taking a look. So that's some of the things that we've done in the past and continue to do.
Oh,
I
okay,
did, I did see a question in the chat, and I don't want to do a bunch of questions from the chat per se, but there was a question in the chat about having a law enforcement officer there for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And with the exception of the additional officer that we have for that duty on some of those weekends during season, I don't, we would probably make some sort of push, but that's probably not going to be something that we would expect nor be able to afford on a regular basis. Is that accurate, Chief?
Yes, that's accurate. And you got to remember that each location has had complaints, just about every location in every park that we've had. So when we're not at full staff, we are looking very good. I just actually hired an officer today. I'll be announcing him tomorrow. And I got an appointment with another one on Friday. So when we're back at full staff, that's always a little bit more with our reserve officers. But right now we're at minimal staffing as it is right now.
Councilperson Rose, did that get you all the information you requested?
other than the fact, does anybody think if we get rid of these docks, that will solve the problem? I mean, maybe that's what has to happen.
Yeah, I'd say, man, I mean, these are such challenging compromises. We made some moves 6 months ago, saw some initial response, and now I feel like we're kind of back to square one. Obviously, we're discussing the next level of that as we promised we would at this point. you know, to then remove the structures as well would, you know, certainly it's council's prerogative, but that is a, you know, that's kind of the biggest possible move you could make as well. So I'd love to see if we could come to some middle ground that would allow town residents to enjoy these amenities without, you know, without them being unsafe and unwieldy and, you know, a burden to those residents around them. You know, I mean, but, you know, certainly it's not outside the realm of discussion.
Okay, well, maybe separate the issue then. One
Mhm.
option is take off the roofs, because those are, I think, a bigger liability for the town than anything.
Yeah.
And at least then they can't jump. They're
Agreed.
not, they're obviously not going to abide by signage, so you tried that. Good try.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's all these things are they're you know, like all of these things that we have to do, the expense comes at the residents' quality of life, and that's what makes these kind of decisions so painful. So but obviously, you know, we're at a breaking point here where I think that as someone who's sat down there and who talks to residents who live there regularly, it's a big issue. So we'll go ahead and have Councilperson Martini, then Councilperson Davitt up next.
Thank you, Mayor, and everyone who has signed on for this meeting and previous meetings. I agree. It really is a, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. You know, we've all seen the videos and, you know, I've had, you know, a significant number of resident contact on this issue seemingly every weekend. And it's not just on the weekends. It's there's quite a bit of people there during the week as well. As far as enforcement goes, I mean, our guys are there almost every day as it is. So I think if we were to enact something like this, you know, it basically boils down to behavior. You know, if somebody's down there with their kids and, you know, they're not raising Cain, there's no reason for the officers to go down there or even check IDs. You know, but when the behavior issue flares up, you know, that would give the PD, you know, more enforcement power and be able to shoo those folks away. As far as and you know, I think we all know that social media kind of created this issue in part. So if we were to reverse this and privatize the park, I think social media would work in reverse also, and the word would get out that this is private property. It's no longer public access. You know, maybe we could do like we did during the pandemic, just shut the park down. We're going into the cooler months, you know, before this could even be enacted. If we get to a date where this would be imposed, we could shut the park down for a month or two, put out some fluorescent signage like the county does with any other zoning change, informing the public that it's going to be private property as of you know, X date or whatever. And then, you know, if the police are still interacting with people down there, maybe give them flyers and say, you know, just want to give you guys a heads up, as of such and such a date, this property, this dock, you know, this park will be Town of Windermere residents only. You know, enjoy your time while you can. And, you know, that way we can minimize. I certainly don't want to create additional, you know, possibly dangerous interactions with our police department. But I think if we gave enough notice and, you know, we focus on the educational components that the chief was talking about, that, you know, this could be a relatively smooth transition. And then, you know, hopefully it would cut down significantly on the noise and the problems that the residents are having. That's
Thank
my
you, Council.
time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson Martini. Councilperson Davitt.
Thanks, Mayor. What I've got is primarily just a bunch of questions covering this topic that I'm not sure have been covered. I know we've had several work sessions on this. one of the biggest things I think is the immediate need is removal of a hazard. And that's obviously folks jumping off of the structures, whether it be the roof or up on the railings of the docks. So I think that's an immediate need. Robert, have you or Tanya looked at costs of removing the upper structures of the dock and leaving the dock, and how much that would be?
No, but that's something we would explore. And I believe Nora Brophy put in the chat box that Parks and Rec has discussed that, and they had a lot of pushback from removing the roof structure at Fifth and Lake.
Okay, and then you've already got the to go out and verify the confirmed amount for the FERDAP payback?
Yes, we're working with DEP and working with Angie Bright from DEP as well as their attorneys to go over the contract that was executed in 2007, 2008. There's a 25-year window to where you have to keep it open. But there's different clauses that hopefully we can utilize to either forgive the, not loan, but the FERDAP amount,
The grant.
or to pay it back.
Okay. Well, what do you know what that contract, what that amount was used for? Was that to actually build the structures? And if so, is that the only thing that is covered as far as needing to remain open to the public based on that grant?
We have the grant language, and then you have to not only show the elements that you promised to build for the FERDAP application, because you get points for every different amenity that you put in there. I believe the amount that we received was between 112 or 117, and the town's portion was about 35,000. And we actually had to, when I say we, previous administration had to take off an amenity in order for them to be able to fund the entire amount they allocated. But once you finish the project, you agree to keep it as a open park for the general public for 25 years. And it's just not the specific amenity, it's the boundary of the park area.
Okay, so I was just unclear on that contract language for the FERDAP grant. The next thing, just a quick question for either Tanya or Mandy. Have we explored doing like a permitted entry into the park? And is that allowed under the FERDAP grant? And the reason I ask is because I've been to several beaches and such that you needed permits to go out there. They're sold at town hall, or you need to sign up for that. Has that ever been explored?
Tanya?
There's been a lot of discussion about parking permits, but no, never about a permit to actually get into the park.
Yeah, I know there's requirements for state parks, and then there's additional fees for other amenities in parks that are funded by the local municipality, whether it be a pool, a tennis court, so on and so forth. But we can work with DEP on what we can and cannot regulate when it comes to these parks, if they're going to remain as a resident only, or is there some kind of language that we can include to get a permit, and what that permit would look like. Because I currently have one for state parks, like Honeymoon Island, Sebastian Inlet, some of those areas.
Yeah, Robert and I looked at the language today in the FERDAP agreement, and it's it's pretty clear, but that's certainly worthy of looking at to see if there's any options. That's why we were hoping for potentially like a forgiveness option as well. Sometimes there's not a mechanism for the state to take the funds back. It can be something as simple as that. So, there may be some ways to hopefully save us a little money, although it'll still cost money to do this no matter what. But I think that, as long as those numbers are reasonable, that is something that we could certainly accomplish.
I'm sorry, Mayor, just a real quick clarification on something you said. So you said that the language was fairly clear. Was that clear language that we cannot then permit entry into the park based on that grant?
So I don't want to say that, I'm not a contract lawyer, but to the layperson, it certainly looked as if it needed to be open to the public. I believe that was the exact language that was used.
Mayor, can I jump in here for a second?
Sure.
There is language in the FERDAP compliance responsibilities, which allows the town to charge an admission to the facility and a separate admission price or a different admission price to non-residents. However, it seems to be fairly complex in determining that separate admission price. We couldn't charge residents $5 and then $500 for non-residents, because we have to demonstrate that the cost of maintenance, et cetera, is so vast for non-residents to justify that amount. So I'm not sure it'd be worth going down that path, but it is what it is.
Hey, it's worthy of some, it's worthy of inquiry. That's for certain. Sometimes these things tend to, it would be my hope that potentially there's a working path towards some type of forgiveness or, a settlement of some sort. I also, one of the things I do want to caution just about a little bit is, I would prefer that we, with those type of agreements, you tend to get in the press and, you always come off looking terrible and unfair, and if we can avoid some of that, it's probably worth a little bit of money. It's just not, those things, they just turn into more than what they are, and sometimes you end up with worse than what you hope for. So, if we're going to do it, let's do it clear, let's do it right, according to the letter of the law and through the proper process. But hey, if there's some loopholes in there that are legal and work and council is all for them, then we can certainly look at those things.
So Mayor, before we get into public comment, so what I'm hearing is there's common consent to explore the privatization of these parks and to work with FDEP in order to see about the repayment of the FERDAP funds, and then to work on logistics on how to incorporate it to be a resident-only park. Is that correct?
So that is too what I'm hearing. I'm also hearing potential support for some additional research on the smoking and vaping ordinances, and also removal of, at the very least, the roof type hazards on those docks. So I think that is, as well as the, obviously we're going to have to figure out the zoning and PUD ramifications. And if there is some type of permitted entry, we can work in that too. I think those are some, unless council disagrees with anything that I've just said, I think that is general consensus, and then we'll get to public comment, and that may tweak. I don't see anybody saying no. Okay, fair. All right. At this time, council, are we good to move to public comment? All right, and I know there's been several opportunities, but I do see a lot of engagement and interest here, so we want to make sure that we allow everyone the opportunity to provide comment, especially those adjoining neighbors. So if you are interested in commenting, if you could put your virtual hand up, and then Robert can kind of work through. We'll do it in no particular order, and I'd ask that we do our best to keep it at 3 minutes.
We do have Dorothy doing the timer, but Teresa Myers.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, Teresa.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having this meeting. I just wanted to let you know that we also have some similar issues over at the Manors Park, at the recreation park on the island across the way where the pavilion is and the volleyball courts. Myself and Zoe Villain spend a lot of time over there exercising our dogs in the park. And so I can tell you just about once a week, we clean up that pavilion with the trash that's strewn and left behind. So it's not just that park that's experiencing these problems. Number two, I think that if these kids are our kids, if we're absolutely sure that there are no Windermere residents involved, I don't know that we know that, but if there are some Windermere kids involved in this, I think social media using Instagram would be the way to reach them. And I think our youth committee can be very helpful on helping us reach these kids. They're not on Facebook, they're on Instagram and some of those apps. And I think we can reach those kids through education, like you were talking about, on that Instagram account, if the town would set that up, and with the help of the youth committee, find ways to reach those kids. And number three, I think some youth athletics or some alternative activities for these teenagers that are bored, getting in trouble. Mom and dad are at work, they're not paying any attention. If we had some athletic leagues or something going on where we can redirect these energies for these kids in a healthy environment, would go a long way to preventing the illegal activities and the vaping and a lot of the shenanigans and trouble that they're getting into at the lake. Just putting that out there. I know there's a lot of grants that are available through Parks and Recreation for summer leagues, and I see them in a lot of other small towns just like us. I was just up in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, and across the street from us was a little park with a basketball court, and they were doing summer athletic league in their little basketball court, which was about the size of our basketball park in the town square. So I think we could, head in that direction as well. Give them an alternative.
Oh, who did it?
Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate that. We do have the Instagram, by the way, for the town, just FYI. So,
Okay.
but I agree that I agree with others too, that, social media is an avenue that we can utilize, hopefully, to get more word out. Mr. Irwin. I see Mr. Irwin there. Go ahead, sir.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so, one of the questions I had is that the park, we've lived on Lake Street for 35 years. And the park is much different than it was 35 years ago. And so is the town, but still, it used to be a community, family oriented, and now it's not. And I don't want my grandkids to go over there. My granddaughters see bathing suits and grandsons see bathing suits that shouldn't be seen in a family oriented community park. But a couple of questions that I had and comments. One question is that, first of all, the dock was built in two terms. Hodgkins built the first dock, and it went out to the first T, if you will. It ended in a T. And then, 4 or 5 years later, the dock was extended and the roof was put on. And also, the Hodgkins dock had ropes, which you couldn't stand on. And of course, the new dock replaced the ropes with, a siding and so forth that you could stand on. And I wondered whether or not, were those two different grants, and are we talking about less money for the second dock expansion? So that was my question. That was the first question.
Okay. For the first question, the PERDAP grant encompassed the entire length of the park, whether it be just benches, swings, any other amenities. So as far as when you look at the sketch of description, it includes both of the areas. So we would have to repay those funds no matter what. As when it comes to like the ropes versus the siding, as you put it, those ropes were always either cut, tethered, or created more of a liability too. And those ropes are very expensive to replace. That's why we even did it at the Fernwood boat ramp, was to replace the ropes that were out there as well. So we're doing those on a consistent basis.
I understand that, but I'm just pointing to the point
Right.
that the ropes you couldn't stand on, the sides to get on the roof. And anyway, I would like to say, one, the police are so attentive to that area. We had an incident last week, and the police were out there in minutes, less than 5 minutes. And they're so attentive. Diane and I live next door to this public dock. And as I said, I've lived on Lake Street for 35 years. My other comment, just for general comment, was that, even though we accepted state funds, the size of this dock and the area immediately around the dock on Lake and Fifth is in the maybe several thousand feet. And if you get more than a dozen people in it, it's crowded. It's just not meant for 45, 50, 60 people.
Right.
And it just seems to me that the state could be sensitive that this was meant for a small number of individuals and not 500,000 people in West
Fine.
Orange County using it.
And that's one of the arguments that we're going to make to DEP is that, this has created more of a nuisance than an amenity to the local residents because of the outside pressures put on it. So that would be one of the arguments we make to DEP in order to get the loan forgive, not the loan, but the grant forgive or we repay.
Thank you.
And and that the dock was fully covered, and just like it is today, for at least 2 or 3 years that I can recall, and we didn't have these issues. These issues started pretty quickly, and I think mostly through the advent of social media. And once it took off, it just really spread. So, but we've seen that on the lakes in general. So, this area has really been put under pressure by development outside of our community. I'm not sure who Galaxy Tab S6 is, but they are next. If you're a Galaxy Tab S6, if you will unmute and give us your name and address, you could do public comment. If not, we will move to Ms. Huffman.
Okay, so Christy Huffman, 511 Magnolia Street. We're right on the corner above the Lake Street Park. So we see all of the traffic and everything that's going on there. And I think, speaking just to Mr. Irwin's comment, we've been here 19 years. And so we were here before there was a park. We were here during the fight with the lawsuit to try to get rid of, for the homeowners to absorb that property. And it once we turn that into a nice place for the residents to be able to go, that's really how we got to know a lot of our neighbors. A lot of our kids got to know each other. I know my daughter, grew up with the Kellogg's grandson down there. And now, my daughter who's at Olympia High School, she and her friends, I won't even let them go there. She has a couple friends over. I won't even let her walk down a half of a block to the lake and enjoy the lake. And I think that's the real sadness here, is all of us that are on this side and used to enjoy the lake and used to meet at the lake, and our kids played in the lake and we brought our dogs and all of that. Now it's just become this thing that we avoid, this thing that we have to call the police about, this constant stream of traffic driving and walking past our houses to get down there and just have a party, every other day. So, I've written all of you, so I don't need to continue on, but just, we're all just, hoping, praying and ready to work for whatever the solution can be. I hope that it can be like our tennis courts where, we don't mind paying a $25 fee to get a tennis court key and have that private to the town. We would not mind paying whatever, a permit fee to have access to the Lake Street Park, or to have to show our ID or whatever. But I do hope that the amenities like the docks can stay there and not be taken down, because basically it's our only access to the lake. And I know that we were, by our real estate agent, kind of sold on that amenity that, if you live in the town of Windermere, look, you have this access here to the lake. And if that's taken away from us, it just really diminishes, why we moved here to start with. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Christine. Let's see, Penny's iPhone. Penny, if you could give us your full name and address and make your public comment and unmute.
Thank you, Robert. Penny Ford. I was on the meeting about 3 weeks ago. Windermere resident, 26 plus years, raised 3 kids here, have 3 grandkids here. So moving along, I like Bill's idea to potentially shut the park down for a short period of time, even though it will take away from resident access, but will defer outside access. Resident access on the dock.
I'm having trouble hearing her. Is everybody else?
I am too.
Yeah, Penny, we're losing you. You want to try again there?
I'm sorry. I'm on my let me try. Can you hear me or no?
We can. You were just fading out a couple times.
Okay, sorry. As far as the roof access for the kids, if this becomes a town-only park, let's build a friggin' ladder and a platform and let the kids dive off. Bill, we've done it at your house. My son, my grandkids, my children have done it at the Lake Street Park. If it's controlled and it's resident, let the kids have fun. As far as park access, extend our permits like we do for the boat ramp and the tennis. Just add a fee onto it. Let the gates be our special keys that are changed every year. And as far as park access, give us a special keychain or a wristband that we can give our kids, as opposed to just putting our pass in our dashboards on our vehicles. Windermere is special. Our parks are special. We fought hard to get this Lake Street Park that was hidden from most of us for a number of years. Go back again to the beginning of the town's establishment. The Lake Street Park was always there for the town residents. Take it back, pay the money, live through the bullshit that we're all gonna have to live through, both the police and the town residents, for the 90 days to 6 months that it's gonna take us to get rid of the riffraff, and let's take it back.
Time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Penny. You know,
I
one
do,
interesting.
I do want to remind people of the decorum policy that will be edited out of the YouTube channel, but from decorum, please let's watch our language.
Oh, sorry.
One of the interesting things, if you read through all the minutes back to the beginning of time, and there's several references to the Fifth Street Park when the road was there itself, and there's a lot of commentary in those minutes about all the folks coming in from Ocoee and using the lake. So, you know, this is an ongoing, long time issue, but you know, certainly what we've experienced of late has been dangerous, and I do worry too about the you know, the confrontation levels that seem to be increasing between not only the police but local residents, and some of the threats that are made to those individuals as well. And you know, I don't want to be I don't want to miss an opportunity to make sure that we do everything we can to avoid those situations. Let's see who
Jim,
has their
I'm
hand
just
up.
gonna say there was a very long time that the town residents didn't even know that that belonged, that park
Yep.
and that whole stretch of land, they didn't even know it belonged to park residents.
Thank you, Penny.
So-
As
Thanks.
Dorothy indicated, you reached your time. Just to be fair for
Thank you.
everybody, you still have the ability to email all of the council your thoughts on this matter, since they cannot take any official action tonight. So there will be another meeting after this. So please feel free to go ahead and email them your thoughts. Without
Councilperson Martini. Councilperson Martini has her hand up, and then I don't know who iPhone 3 is. We'll get to iPhone 3 next.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate on something you said, Mayor, about the the pressure chain of lakes wide, that the development and all the folks moving here and that type of thing. If or when the Bird Island ordinance goes into place, I believe it's going to increase the pressure on Lake Street Park. And, we already call it Little Bird Island because of what goes on there. And I think once the Bird Island ordinance starts being enforced, it's going to make our situation here even worse. So it's important for us to get ahead of that,
Good.
I think. And I had one quick question for Chief about that. The new slow it down, turn it down ordinance, does that apply to boats also? Like, is that something that OC can?
It does not.
It does not. Okay. All right.
just to, again, to extend upon that, FWC and OCSO are going to have a hard time on Lake Down. The reason being that most of their focus is on the other Butler chain and other areas of high popularity.
And they can't get under the bridge.
That is one of the challenges. iPhone 3, could you give us your name and address and go ahead and make your public comment?
I think that might be me. Can you
I
hear
think
me?
it is. Yes, we can.
It's Denise Tormey. I'm at 326 East Fifth Avenue. My mother lives at 346 East Fifth Avenue, and she's been there since '87. And I, not too long ago, bought a house a couple doors down from her so I could be a little closer to her. And yes, I just want to reiterate that the Lake Street Park has always been such a special place for us. That's where I taught all of my kids to swim. It's always just been such a beautiful place. And now it's become a complete nuisance to all of us that live near it and rarely go down there. And the noise, the trash, the level of disrespect is unbearable. And I don't think that we should get rid of the dock or the roof. I think that it's, that makes it really special. And we should be able to enforce, the laws that are down there, the noise ordinances, no alcohol, the don't jump off the roof. Can we not, I know the kids are going to be kids and all that, but if, because it's a danger and we explain that to them, they're breaking the rules, they're breaking the laws, so they can't come back, period. If they do that, I don't see why we should get rid of something that is special to us just so that people can't break the rules. So my vote would be not to get rid of any of the dock or the roof or any of that, just be able to either enforce that they're breaking the rules and they're no longer allowed to come there. If they do it more than once or twice, take their name, take a picture of them, whatever it takes to let them know that this is happening. And then, let's get this back to being a Windermere amenity and not just anybody that wants to come down that has no skin in the game, that doesn't care about any of it, not the beauty of the water, the the noise levels that go out there. They just don't have the respect for it. But if they're town residents, and I believe that most of the town residents do care about Windermere and won't, continue to do the things that are going on down there and create havoc for all of us, including the police and everybody else. So I just wanted to reiterate my vote is to buy back the grant. And I think that Mr. Martini's idea is a pretty good idea. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. Brandy Haynes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm fine with the paying back the FERDAP grant. I know this has been talked about for weeks. I guess one of my concerns is, and I don't live next to these, lucky for me, I'm on Bessie, no one likes that lake, I guess, so we don't have to worry about it there. But one of the things that I'm concerned with is that, you know, if I'm out for a bike ride with my daughter and we want to stop at Fernwood Park, now we have to have, you know, a key for Fernwood, and we have to have a fee for Fernwood. And then now we have like the Lake Street Park. And then you've got, you know, Teresa mentioned there's problems, you know, at Windermere Rec Center. So I think we're going to have to start looking at this as like some sort of master plan for all the parks, because I don't want to be riding around and on my bike in town and going to different playgrounds or things throughout the town and have to have 25 little keys jingling on a keychain, or whatever the different ways are to get into all these different parks. I mean, it starts to become cumbersome. We're paying back the grant. I'm all for that. But then having a separate little fee for each and every park and playground that's supposed to be part of the amenities of us in town also seems like, you know, it's just going to get into a slippery slope. So every one of our parks are going to have these issues. We know that it's going to keep happening. It's going to be all of the parks at some point. So we need to come up with a plan and something that can work with all of them. I know it's potentially a little bit more expensive, but one of the things my husband said is that there's, you know, phone reader things that you can do on some of these gates that, you know, residents can have or something. But if we're going to do keys everywhere, then it needs to be the same key for all of them for residents or something, not so that we're not having 20 different separate sets of things we got to, you know, have with us when we go out. I do think that the roof should stay, and I mean, we go out and enjoy it occasionally. We don't go there a lot because it, quite frankly, we've almost been hit by a car on our bikes over there. But, you know, we do go there. I enjoy going out on the dock and, you know, being able to sit there and relax and have some shade because it is Florida. So that would be my comment, that we need to start looking at a holistic approach, because I just can't imagine having to carry 6 million keys around just to ride around my town and go to parks.
Ready would be a key code, we don't want to make a dungeon master out of anybody. So you just have a 5-digit key or number that we would give you that is specific to your residence. So you wouldn't have to carry a bunch of keys.
At Fernwood and at Lake Street and
Yes,
anywhere else we implement it?
If that, again, we would work out the logistics, but our intent would be to have one keypad code per residence, sorry.
And then one fee for all our parks?
No, the key is completely different. The key is for just
Okay.
the tennis courts right now. But for the boat ramp, it's going to be a different keypad for that versus what is your generic park access key code.
So the park to go through the pedestrian thing at Fernwood, because I know there's a pedestrian gate that someone said we were going to have a code and a fee and whatever, not the boat.
We did not decide a fee for that, and there wasn't a code access for that at this time. It was just for the boat ramp itself.
Okay, that's what I had heard. So yeah. Okay, well, still holistic something, whatever.
I'll build the holistic committee, Brandy, and we'll sign you up.
I hear you.
Tom Stroop, please.
Still up in the Adirondacks, but anyway, thank you guys for everything you're doing. I really appreciate it, and it sounds like everybody's going the right direction. I agree that Bill Martini and doing something immediate. It's like anything else, you know, it's triage. You have to address whatever's the worst situation at the time. And right now, this is the worst situation. Whether we do a big giant plan for everything, or whether we do long-term other things is one thing, but something immediate needs to be done. And just for the record, and this is the old cop coming out in me, I guess, these kids aren't looking for something to do. They don't need a grant to send them off to some, boot camp or something. They know exactly what they're doing. They know that they're smoking marijuana or whatever drugs else they're using in their vape. They know that they're crapping in the water or on the beach. They know they're having sex in the water. They know they're jumping off a dock that they shouldn't be jumping. They know all of this already. It's not like we have to remind them of this. The only solution is going to be that we tell them, you cannot do this anymore. And that's it. They know they're doing it. We just have to stop them from doing it. No different than when I was a teenager. I did what you let me do, and then I would stop doing it if you made me stop. So the bottom line with all of this is the semantics can be worked out, but there's a real problem there. And we have to do something about it as soon as we can to stop it. And educating these kids is not what they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think anybody here could even argue that point, that these kids don't know what they're doing. Excuse me, too much swimming. But the idea is that we have to fix it, and we have to fix it as soon as possible, because it is a quality of life issue for those people that live there. And it's not a quality of life issue that is down the road. This is a quality of life issue that happened to them almost every day. So I like the direction everything's going. I agree paying the money back, and I also agree with Bill on, start doing something as soon as possible. And thank you guys for what you're doing. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your input. Any further public comment? TC, Chief Ogden.
And Mayor, not just as a point of order, school is going back August 10th. And I think when that happens, we're going to see a difference. That's probably going to help this situation a little bit. So I think as you make your decisions, that's something to be aware of. And of course, that's going to pick back up on Oakdale Street, Randy, for you over there. So, school letting in and letting out, does have an effect on what we're seeing and what's going on.
I agree. It certainly will have an effect. And, and I want to be straightforward with everybody that, there's pieces and parts to this that are going to require a little bid of time. So there's ordinances involved. Those take 2 readings, a minimum of 60 days. There's a PUD review, zoning review, and then of course the DEP portion and the FERDAP portion that we're going to have to work our way through. We may be able to make some adjustments and tweaks in hours or closures or what have you to try to eliminate some of that. But this is the kickoff for phase 2. So there is going to be some process to this, and I know that no one wants to hear that, but that is the reality of doing these things the proper way. So as well as just getting, if council agreed to put up a fence tomorrow, fences like this are 60 days out. So just so everyone just understands that, and Tanya's laughing at me. It might be more than 60 days out. She's laughing. Okay. So as you well know, just supply chain issues and things like that, just the reality of what we're faced to do. But that doesn't mean we don't build this out. We don't get the input from staff. We don't continue to get input from the residents. And we don't work towards this at our next meeting to get it approved at the next council meeting and get these funds available to move forward on these items. Any additional comment from council? Council, anything that we want to add to staff direction post public comment, or do you think that the bullet points that we discussed earlier are going to get us where we need to go? All right, I'm seeing all thumbs up. I appreciate everybody's input. I know you guys have been working on this, and we're going to continue to. And I know not one single thing will solve these issues. It's going to take, the entire package, and we'll just keep pushing up against the limit and try to preserve everything we can for residents, including convenience and access and the amenity portion of what we have here in our beautiful parks and all the work that Park and Recreation and town staff do. But obviously there will be some pain and pressure point squeeze on this stuff. So we'll just continue to try to balance that out, work and support our law enforcement as we deal with some of the impacts of some of these changes. So that is all I have. Council, any other additional announcements or anything that you would like to make while we are meeting in the public? All right, seeing none. Thank everybody for their time. I know a lot of people are traveling, and we'll go ahead and close our workshop at 7:19 p.m. And we will discuss this next at our upcoming town council meeting. I believe it's on the August 9th.
Thanks, everybody.